So, hello everyone. Thank you for everybody for showing up. My name is Hans-Jürgen and I'm glad to inform you that I'm in charge of the drinking vouchers later on for the reception upstairs after the presentation. So maybe that should draw your attention on behalf of the sponsors. So, let's continue. This year, I hope I got a bit of more of a funny presentation, I hope at least. And it's about war stories fighting the Postgres support trenches. So I compiled a couple of things we've just witnessed over the past 20 years when doing Postgres support, all the nasty things that can blow up, all the nasty things that can go wrong, all the wonderful things, you know, coming from customers and things like that. So I just wanted to share some of those experiences to hopefully entertain you a bit. So, let's get started. To introduce myself, I'm the founder of Cybertech. You might have heard about us. We are basically a Postgres support company. We're quite international, I would say. So we've been around for 20 plus years doing Postgres support. And we got some customers you might know, like BMW and United Nations and things like that. So, and here we got a problem with the video. We lost the video. That's very convenient. Let's try again. What can possibly go wrong? Huh? This is your first story, right? Yeah, I mean, that's not the only thing that can possibly go wrong. Just trust me, that's easy cake. You know, that happened before. Actually, usually when I go to the US, something breaks out of my tooth on the runway or something like that. So that's easy cake. So we've been working with a couple of reasonably interesting customers, but let me bore you no more. So, nasty support cases. Let's say everything happens, you know, humans at work, performance, getting to the client in the first place, ending up on immigration bench, being close to jail, you know, everything is there. Let's get there. So the first thing, of course, when you're doing database work is you have to reach the client, right? So you have to get there physically, at least before COVID. So what can possibly go wrong? As I told you, we are trying to be very international. And the customer said, can you come there? So I Googled the place, and that's the place. I've never heard of this thing. It's the 7th biggest country on Earth. Unfortunately, it's all water. This is the country of Kiribati. Does anybody know where that is? Anybody ever heard of it? You've heard of it, right? It's the 7th largest country. It's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's 7 hours west of Hawaii. And that's where it is. It takes 3 days to get there. And the Kiribati government is actually running, I think they do at least still, a Postgres database in their labor market thing, I believe. I offered them, I will go there if you purchase just a flight ticket. Nothing else. I'll go there. The problem is that the price of the flight ticket is the gross domestic product of 3 Kiribatis for a year or something like that. So they gladly refused that. But you see, Postgres these days is quite international. Actually, in this area, there are more Postgres databases. You might not know that, like German embassies, United Nations, Atomic Test Ban Treaty, sensors, stuff like that. Do you have a question, sir?
I'm curious what metric you were using when you categorized Kiribati as the 7th largest country in the world.
Wikipedia. How did you classify Kiribati as the 7th largest country? And the answer is, I think I saw it on Wikipedia because it's all water. But I didn't check it personally. I don't know. I just read it. It's just a huge chunk of water. I think the biggest elevation is 16 meters or something like that. Yeah, so I think it's outside international waters. I just read it somewhere. It's just a huge place of water, you know. But what I'm trying to say here, Postgres is everywhere, right? So it's even on some United Nations, you know, nuclear test ban sensors. So actually getting to the client might not be that easy, but life is getting more complicated because even if you reach the client, what can happen actually is that you have to deliver the thing. And I've taken this one out of a purchase order from German industry, and it says the product has to be delivered so that it can be lifted with a crane. So actually, it was in their terms of conditions that if you deliver a Postgres training, you should be able to lift it in with a crane, right? So that was in their purchase order in German industry. That was nice because it didn't insist on the delivery method explicitly, but it would have been nice to just float in there, you know, on a crane or something, right? Total nonsense, right? Actually, there was one more thing at United Nations. I went in Vienna. There's, you know, you have the United Nations in New York and you have United Nations in Vienna, right? Which is actually exterritorial. There was a bank robbery at Vienna United Nations. And it was a huge government affair because the police just cannot get there. It took me 2.5 hours to get into the atomic agency. At 11 o'clock, they called me, "Where are you?" I was still at the entrance. Because they took every single serial number of every single piece of hardware when getting in, not when getting out. Because they have 4 exits, and they took a wrong corner, and the guy at the gate didn't know what to do, and just let me pass with a car full of hardware. Right? But it took me 2.5 hours to get in, right? So, at some point, you get started, right, doing your stuff. Soon, we will actually see a real Postgres database. So, the trouble starts. Obviously, to fix a problem, you got to touch the database somehow. What can possibly go wrong? That's the only customer on my blacklist in 20 years. Can you migrate this database? Sure. And then, after 6 weeks of weekly phone conversations, they complained that we didn't get anything done. And the reason why that happened was that they didn't grasp that they actually need a login for the database to do migration. And when we finally told them, "Hey guys, we need a login to go into the database," they complained, "But then you're going to see all the data." Yeah, because you want to move it from A to B, right? We have to log it into the database, read the data, put it somewhere. And that took 6 weeks, and they were horribly mad at us because we didn't tell them that we need login into their database to migrate it, actually. So that ended not very nicely, I get to say. But we got basically pissed off because we requested login to the database to migrate it. So very, very nice thing. Germany, have I mentioned that? No. But finally, obviously, there are some customers that let you go to their database, but even there, something can go wrong. There was some industry customer, and the disk filled up, disk full. That happens. Postgres doesn't like that. It's a very sad thing. You can end up with all kinds of nasty problems, and you should basically avoid it. You know, disk full is something you can reasonably avoid. But how do you get there in the first place? That's the interesting part. And what happened is, how could that happen? It must not happen. Postgres is to blame. Your fault. The thing is, they created a replica from one database to the other. And of course, what they did was they checked if there is enough space on the copy. They figured out that the replica, the server, the second server, was a couple of gigabytes too small. They knew that, but still started to create the replica and ran up with a full disk because for some magical reasons, the thing is going to shrink, right? So they explicitly had a process, check for the size. The check said, no, it's too small. They copied regardless and then complained bitterly that the whole thing fucks up, right? This really happens. You can't believe it. So you're trying to put 10 cans of beer into your car. It doesn't fit, but you try assuming that your car is going to grow on the way, something like that. It seriously happens. I mean, you start to doubt humanity, right? I believe that many people, that many animals died out because they were eating those people, you know? That's junk food, you know? Sorry for that. This really happens. I'm not making this up. I'm not creative enough to make it up. Trust me, I'm not creative enough to make it up. But this really happened. This was also cool. How do you do that? Create database, and what you get is file not found. Now, how do you do that? Some people who might know Postgres, any ideas? How do you do that? I said, yeah, that's a cool one. The way you do it, you start Postgres, you empty the data directory, do a fresh initdb, and then do a create database. And then you call up third level at 3 in the morning, create database file not found. How can it happen? You know, you get all kinds of crazy ideas. What could go wrong there? But actually, they deleted the whole database, did a fresh initdb, which I forgot to put here, and then created the database, connected to it, and everything fell apart. And then it was huge drama. Actually, there was a similar case on a car assembly line. Imagine you have 5 machines all next to each other, and they got 3 plugs, right? And on all those 5 measurement points, each having 3 plugs, every time the first 2 cables were plugged in. Only on the last machine, it was 2 other cables. And one guy in the night shift couldn't stand that the last machine was different. That's a car assembly line, and swapped it out. Of course, the whole assembly line stopped. And then he was so confused that he put the cables back in the wrong order and fucked up the whole assembly line because he couldn't stand the layout of the cable. Right? This really happened in a European car factory. So this is not unrealistic, right? So, sample case number 3. How do you do similarity search in Chinese? A simple application storing points of interest in China. Chinese descriptions. It was about charging stations, stuff like that, with a little description on that. And the support request was, how can we do similarity search in Chinese? I have no idea. I can seriously tell you, I don't know how you do similarity search on Chinese characters. I have no clue. Trust me on that one, no idea. So that was one of the more easier parts. We gladly refused that one. But it happens that sometimes you get some strange things where you simply don't know what happens, right? So similarity search in Chinese. If anybody has an idea, I think the case is still open for 10 years or something like that. Okay, so if anybody has a clue, that's Chinese similarity search. So, but there is more. How do you do that? Select star from, the table was there, but then you get a table does not exist. How do you do that? It took me a while to figure out. What they did is, the database was in Latin 1, with the German umlaut being in Latin 1, in the application and in the database. So if you dump the database and reload it in UTF-8, you get a character mismatch on the umlaut. So you see the table there, but if you are doing the thing with the wrong locale, you won't find the table anymore. Because they got special characters in their table names, and when you swap around with the character sets, you're not going to find the table, which you clearly see. Took a while to figure out. That's not that easy, because you see it, you can't read it. What's going on there, right? So this can drive you nuts, right? So that can happen. So in other words, don't do it. Please, don't do it. It's really, really nasty, right? that took me a while, right? Not me, but one of my folks here, right? But there is more. Obviously, when you're dealing with a couple of people, you're facing complaints once in a while, right? So this doesn't work, it's too late, whatever. We know that. That happens. Best effort, it can happen. But some complaints, not all complaints are created equal. Let's figure out. We want to set up a high availability cluster. What do we need? Well, you need 2 database servers, a witness, 4 IP addresses, right? Patroni cluster, automated failure, whatever. Those guys complained bitterly about this horrible proposal. For which reason? Does anybody have a clue? What's wrong with that? Absolutely. What does the second database server do? Well, it only sits around and does nothing, right? And our policy is not to buy hardware that's not doing anything. What they actually wanted is to do high availability on one server. Because we don't want machines to sit around idle because you really only need one, right? And you're proposing 2 of them or even 3 of them, and that's totally acceptable because you have to pay for the stuff, right? We don't want that because it's obviously total waste. So that's also a good one. That was he was really pissed, right? He was really angry. He was shouting at me, how could it happen? Waste, whatever, shouldn't be that way. So that was one of my favorite ones. I think we gladly refused the offer. But there is more. We send a support request. When do you plan to respond? Sorry, we didn't get anything. And then they told me they didn't get a response about the request they sent about their fax machine either. Fax machine, physical thing. What's going on there, right? Every email gets converted into a ticket, everything cool. What's going on there? The point is, 10 years before, in Italy, a hardware dealer called Italian Cybertech Hardware Dealership, whatever, went bankrupt. He Googled for Cybertech, found us, did not notice that we're not selling fax machines and scanners, and we had no drivers for Windows 98. And he bitterly complained that nobody wanted to help him with his broken printers, fax machines, and something like that, because he Googled the thing, but he didn't notice that it was a totally different company, right? No drivers for Windows 98. So sorry, guys, there is no Postgres driver for Windows 98, obviously. But sometimes it's not about complaints or anything. Sometimes it's a performance-related thing. People complain about performance. So here is my favorite performance stuff. And again, I did not make it up. This is a subset. Okay, that's not the whole story. That's a subset of issues coming here. So we got an important application. Can Postgres handle the load? Can you tell me more? I mean, which load, which thing, right? Actually, we got a support request last week where somebody said, can you improve our query? 3rd level ticket. He did not send the query. Yeah, but anyway. So, can Postgres handle the load? Current setup, Oracle Enterprise Edition, 8 cores, 32 gigabytes of RAM, disks infinite. Just do the math. What's the price of this thing, Just do the Oracle math. Just do the price of this thing, right? This is real, And then, six rows. what they did is once an hour, they got a weather report, rain in Austria. They put it into the Oracle database to pass it on to something else, and then deleted it again. So it's not 6 rows adding up, it's 6 rows in total. Connected to an ISDN connection. Actually, there was a second guy who asked me, yes, sir.
Was the fax machine also connected?
The question is, was the fax machine connected? Maybe, because ISDN has 2 channels, right? But I'm not sure Postgres can handle the load. Maybe you guys have experiences with dial-up ISDN Postgres? Yeah? Was it you? No. No, this was real. And there was a second guy, actually, who had a similar question some years later. Can Postgres handle the load? We want to scale like Facebook. How many customers do you already have? And he answered, I quote, my brother and me. But we need to scale, guys, just see you. This was real. So just imagine the price of this thing, It's, I don't know, $1 million or something, Anyway, I'm not sure what I said. Sometimes I'm speechless. It happens.
So, Hans,
Yes, sir.
I remember at one point in Germany, ISDN was very expensive.
Yes. In Germany, broadband is really expensive. Absolutely, yeah. Why?
I had an ISDN connection in Hamburg, Germany in the 90s.
An ISDN connection in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that exists.
The least line to our company.
That thing existed. Yeah, that thing existed. I was in Vietnam at that time, and we had broadband. Yeah. Yeah, ISDN, I mean, it's a cutting edge, It's Neuland, I think they call it, yeah. Data models. Our database is slow. Let's take a look, right? You obviously want to see the query, what's going on there. Well, there's a problem here. That's my absolute favorite of the favorite. That's the best one. There was not a single where clause in any of the queries. And the answer was, of course not. And what's the explanation? Can anybody think of an explanation? Because that's the fun part. A where clause is business logic in the database, and business logic should not be in the database. Come on. Actually, we had one guy in Vienna who had some index phobia or something like that because he blew something up in a bank as a student, and from then on he considered indexes to be evil because every time he created one, which was once in his life, a banking system blew up. Index phobia exists. I'm not sure if it's an official medical term, but it exists. Oh, that's not a good sign. Understanding is not a good thing, right? I mean, please believe me, I'm not creative enough to come up with that just out of that. It's really not the case. I didn't make it up. I can prove that. It's like today I told the story, and Jan is proof that this is real. I asked the French embassy if I can fly to France and if I need a port of entry to land there, and they referred me to the local cafeteria running the airfield to figure out if we can do immigration. French embassy, referring to a cafeteria for immigration. Just saying. I have proof here. He's my witness. Handling results. We got a performance problem. Sure. Let's log in, right? What can possibly go wrong? Some kind of query, and they looked at it, some left join with some end conditions and stuff like that. And I said, I think this query is semantically wrong. It wasn't exactly this query, but something like that. There's a semantic error in this query. This can't be true. Could be, but let's focus on performance first. The damn thing is wrong, but let's fix speed first. Well, everything goes to hell, right? Just no internet connection anywhere, no ISDN, no nothing. But let's fix performance, no problem, right? Sure. I like that, you know, performance is everything, right? That was cool. But we got more. Let's see if I still got some time left. To be or not to be. That's interesting. Sometimes it's not, I mean, this is all bullshit, obviously, right? Obviously, this is all, it's not serious at all, you know. If, I don't know, if you spend $1 million on Oracle, okay, it's expensive, but it doesn't kill anybody, right? Sometimes it's not that easy. Sometimes it really counts, right? And here, when the tax office comes knocking, you know, when you have invoices, they should have a numbering system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if there is a gap, that's not a good thing, right? So if it's 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, that's legal in Italy, but nowhere else in the world, right? It's perfectly fine, right? But this is Europe, so we are true socialism, right? You're not supposed to do that.
You're talking Germany, right?
No, I'm talking Austria. When I'm talking about socialism, I'm talking Austria. Right? In Germany, I think I read somewhere that 80% of all written tax laws are in German. 80% of worldwide literature on taxation is in German. I read that somewhere. Maybe it's just 79%, but just to get the magnitude, right? It's not the Ugandan tax legislation that makes life complicated, right? Is there a tax law in Uganda? I don't know. Actually, there was state terrorism committed by the Germans. They made an aid project in Africa to introduce German income tax. I mean, that's state terrorism, right? So, obviously, they had some gaps in their numbers. And let's assume this is the thing. What can possibly be wrong? Not the Postgres consultants. It's just talking to the mortals. Right? That's the problem. Create a sequence. 1, 2. Begin, rollback, next val. And the next value is 4 and not 3. So if you're using a sequence for numbering invoices, which are not supposed to have gaps, and you're using sequences, every time the database rolls back, there is a gap. That's what it is. And this almost cost them the company, because you're explaining that to a low-paid government tax collector who is a tax collector because he's not capable of doing anything else. And I know those people. I have some relatives in this field, right? And you explain to them that there are invoices missing because your database rollbacks, and for logical reasons, a sequence is allowed to have gaps, and it might circle, but that's totally fine because for concurrency reasons, right? That's not going to work, right? So this almost cost them the bloody company, right? So this went to court and shit like that. So that was really harsh, you know. Sometimes it counts, you know, but it's very hard to explain that to a judge which focuses on family legislation or something like that. That's really harsh. This one is even worse. Saturday in the morning, the phone rings. 1.4 million life insurances. That's the thing you pay for 30 years to receive a pension later. That's a life insurance. So you pay 30 years. Saturday morning, the whole thing went in shambles because the database was wrong, because the storage was broken, but not broken enough to figure out that it's broken. You know, some bits going crazy once in a while, writing 7 bytes instead of 8, you know, mixing things up, stuff like that. No, but it was the same storage with 2 file systems mounted with the backup. It was different disks, but the same controllers. And the controller was the problem. Yeah, it's nice. 1.4 million life insurances. So I fixed it magically. We were sitting like long evenings, restoring stuff. Fortunately, more index corruption than static data. Everything restored, perfect. And then the data protection guys came. Did you delete the data? Yes. Can you prove it? Guys, I was sitting in my office Sunday morning, rescuing a bloody company and 1.4 million life insurances. I was alone. Data has to be deleted according to the 4I principle. Do it. I can't. It's gone. I can't delete it. And by the way, I didn't copy it. I can't delete it. I don't have it. Who can prove it? Nobody. That's not according to the rules. That should not be. It took me 6 weeks to sort out the paperwork. That they finally consented that, yes, this data, which I never copied through Windows Remote Desktop, right, on a system that couldn't read the data, is actually deleted. 6 weeks. 6 weeks for rescuing the company. Yes. But sometimes it's not about drama, it's not about incidents, it's not about anything. Sometimes it's only about making consultants happy, right? So we all appreciate positive feedback. We like being good people. And sometimes you receive the feedback you really deserve. You're one of the best MySQL consultants we've ever dealt with. Thank you for your attention. Any questions? Yes, sir. Well, the backup was gone. How did you have the data? The backup was corrupted, obviously. And the database was corrupted. It wouldn't want to start up because wall records, wrong checksums, and stuff like that. So basically what we did was we copied it off the machine, checked what was wrong, and fixed the data files. That's what it is, right? Fixed the data files and then made a little thing that faked the wall checksum because the thing that was broken was the index only and stuff like that. Okay, so we did copy the data to their machine. So technically, yes. But I think if your hardware is going to up in flames, I would say it's a reasonably okay move. Can you prove it, right? Can you prove that the idea of copying the data is certified by the officer of common sense? Okay, guys, any more questions? Any comments on our obviously shameful behavior dealing with non-existing work clauses or anything of the sort? So, thank you, everyone. I hope it was enjoyable. I hope you don't feel as miserable as we do sometimes. And follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, contact us on LinkedIn, have a beer, and see you all upstairs for the vouchers. Thank you.